So this situation is looking at Revit and Dynamo to generate an occupancy load. And to keep things relevant here, sort of during a pandemic, we thought we would take a look at this as something that you might want to be sharing with clients, especially if it's a school or a restaurant, something where occupancy load is going to change dynamically based on CDC guidelines. So let's start really quick by looking at, let's just reference this really quick. This is a terrible floor plan I just generated for reference, just so we could run these things through a test really quickly. And we're going to use Dynamo to calculate this. So it updates dynamically, and we'll look at bringing those occupancy loads directly into our floor plan as well, pushed in from Dynamo. So what we do know is we need to keep a separation distance of 6 feet. So just kind of thinking through this a bit logically, this started with saying, okay, let's give somebody their own personal space, about a 1 foot diameter, 6-inch radius. From that point, we do 6 feet worth of separation between those two circles. And just for the sake of generating area quickly in terms of how much space it's going to take, I just put a wall around that circle. And from there, I can select my room tag. I can edit the tag type and turn on area. And we can see that a person needs 38 square feet of space at a minimum to maintain social distancing of 6 feet per the CDC guideline recommendations. So turning that on here gives me my square footage numbers everywhere. But I could take this and I could drop it into an Excel spreadsheet, or I could simply do the math on each room. And on a floor plan this size, maybe that's not that big of a deal. But when we get into larger buildings, or when you get into needing to go back and open up multiple buildings and generate this kind of data, the amount of air that you're going to introduce and the amount of time that you're going to introduce becomes pretty dramatic. And so anytime that I have a repetitive task, I'm always looking toward a tool like Dynamo to help me do this quickly, accurately, and effectively, right? So let's go ahead and launch Dynamo. And I already have the graph built inside of Dynamo, but I will walk you through exactly what that is. So I'll spare you the details and boredom of watching me build it, but we'll walk through it step by step. It's a very simple little thing to build. So let's go ahead and launch Dynamo. And we will open up the occupancy load graph. And this is a very simplified version of this. I like things simple. You could add in more things with this, but this is simply a way to quickly generate those numbers. Okay, so first of all, this is grabbing a category for me out of my Revit file, right? So I'm opening, it's very important that you're opening Dynamo from the view that you want this to work in, because this is grabbing the rooms out of Revit in that current view, right? So that becomes a category and generates this simple list of elements, because again, at the core of things inside of a computer, it's all ones and zeros, right? Those rooms don't really know what they are as I stretch them into Dynamo or pull them into Dynamo. So I need to do a little bit with them, right? But this gives me a basic list. From there, I want to generate the room area. So again, if you're fairly new to Dynamo, how I'm pulling these in is I can either do a search here, or I can right click and let's just do room dot area, pops up. And so this essentially is going to calculate, it's going to look at this room tag, right? So room 0 is 355,979. That's its ID tag essentially. And I'm feeding that as an element into an area. So it's pulling the area out of that information and turning that into a number, which is what this word double means. Let's go ahead and delete that node. From here, I need to find my occupancy load. So I've got my area, and I need to find the occupancy load. So if we minimize this again, and let's go back into Revit, 38 square feet is the minimum amount of number that a person needs for that 6 feet of separation. Let's go back to Dynamo. So that was, I'm going to just modify this number to 38. So now I have 38 as a number that's fed in. So this is divide, right? So this is simply if I right click and look at my math functions for divide, find that. That's color divide, wrong divide. Let's type that in a little bit more thoroughly there. Divide, there we go. So this again is just creating a variable. Number in divided by number. So x divided by y creates a variable, which pushes that number into what is called a math floor. And essentially math floor is rounding down, right? So let's build a watch list right here underneath divides. Let's just type in watch. And we can plug that variable in, and we can see again my room list and the number generated, right? So for my area, let's copy that watch list. So just a Control C, Control V, and let's plug that. Went backwards here. That number into this watch list. So you can see that is my area. 480 divided by 38 is going to be 12.6. I can't have 0.6 of a person. So essentially I need to round that down, which is called a floor. So we're going to floor the integer. So if I look at that on my watch list, it's rounding 39.7 to 39, 12.6 to 12, so on and so forth, right? So that needs to be organized into a string, which is a value. I need to send this back into Revit to the occupancy slot. And so that's capital O, occupancy. Really important. If that is a lowercase o, or if I have a typo, it's not going to send it back to the correct parameter in Revit. That is essentially then creating an element. So my element, that is my output. So I am putting in my room element, parameter occupancy, and the value from this string right here. So that has already sent this number back into Revit. I have this set to automatic, right? So if I look at my rooms now, I can select not the room tag, but I want to select the room. So I'm going to use the tab key, select a room. I can scroll down, and now you're going to see capital O occupancy with 39, right? So that is room 2. If I trace that back into Revit, you'll be able to see, or not into Revit, but back into Dynamo. Wrong button. There we are. I can see there's that number 39. So that was tag 1, essentially, and you can track my square footage to the occupancy load being rounded down, and then that being pushed back into Revit, right? So it's great that I have that. I can put that in a list, all that stuff, but visual thinkers that most of us are in architecture and how we want to talk through these kind of things with clients, it would be nice to go ahead and get that on the floor plan. So this is a bit of a hack to be for sure. I don't know as much about room labels and editing labels as I should. So apologies for showing a hack, but to get this quickly on the floor plan, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my room tag here, and I'm going to click Edit Family. And I'm essentially, this is the hacky part here, I'm going to overwrite my volume to become occupancy load. So I'm just going to select volume. I'm going to edit that label. I'm going to remove volume. I'm going to add occupancy and say, okay. So it does change the word here. I'm going to load this to my project, overwrite the existing version. And now if I select my room label, I edit the type, and I turn on show volume. This is the hacky part, right? I would love for this to say show occupancy, but it doesn't overwrite that. That's where, feel free in the comments below in YouTube, show me how I need to, what step I need to go through to overwrite that parameter and actually turn that into show occupancy. That would be great. But once I do that, I will get my number, right? So now I have listed into each of my rooms the number based off of 38 square feet as a minimum number for my occupancy load, which again, right now is a very relevant parameter. This is still dynamic. So if I were to stretch this out and reshape it, all the numbers automatically update and change based off of the parameters that I'm putting in terms of calculating the area, dividing that by my occupancy load, and then generating that new occupancy number for me.